Good morning, everyone, and welcome to PAVE Europe's 28th virtual panel on the future of rural public transport, uncharted territory for autonomous mobility. My name is Nicola Hare, Project and Engagement Manager at PAVE Europe, and I am very delighted to be moderating today's session. As autonomous vehicle technology accelerates, much of the spotlight has been on urban centres. But in rural areas and smaller cities where challenges such as driver shortages, limited coverage, and infrastructure gaps persist, the potential for AVs to reshape public transport is both urgent and very, very exciting. So today we'll explore how AVs can support a more inclusive, efficient, and resilient mobility systems in these contexts. And together with our amazing panelists, we'll examine how innovative service models, infrastructure and regulatory challenges, and how integration with existing transport networks can ensure these solutions work for people and for communities. So I would like to first begin with giving our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. So if I can start with you, Matthieu, that would be great.
Thank you, Nicola. So my name is Matthieu Graindorge. I'm a senior project manager working for the city of Helmond in the Netherlands. I'm quite experienced with European projects which I've been involved in from the beginning of 2000s, I'm afraid, and first as a consultant, then working for the French city of La Rochelle, and from 2018 I've been I'm working for the city of Helmond. And I've been quite involved for a long time also in CCAM or AV projects, because I started to work on City Mobile in 2006. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Matthieu. Martí?
Yes, good morning. Greetings to everyone from Sevilla. I'm Martí Jofre. I'm co-founder at Nemi and also co-founder of the innovation consultancy company Factual. At Nemi, we provide the technology platform to manage demand responsive transportation services based in Barcelona with a strong presence in Spain, but also in other countries like Italy, United Kingdom, Croatia, Slovenia, Portugal, and expanding in Europe.
Amazing. Thank you, Martí. Andre?
Yeah, thank you and welcome from my side. I'm Andre, working for HOLON, the manufacturer of the HOLON Urban, the level 4 autonomous shuttle. And from my side, I'm working in the strategic and business development department. So I'm focused on topics like public affairs, and I'm the first contact person for potential partnerships when it comes to pilot projects or technical partnerships.
Thank you. And finally, Lidia.
Hello, good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Lidia Signor here, the head of multimodal mobility unit in the Knowledge and Innovation Department of UITP, that is the International Association of Public Transport. I'm based in Brussels, where the headquarters is, but is worldwide. And with such a knowledge, we try to help our members and beyond in accelerating learnings. And in my case, I coordinate global work on integrating shared and on-demand mobility, also autonomous, with mass transit and active mobility, thus helping cities and regions, so including rural areas, to develop multimodal systems that can reduce car dependency, giving choice, or freedom of movement, as somebody would say it, sustainable freedom of movement, as somebody would say it. And on a personal note, I'm an urban mobility planner, but actually grew up in a very rural area in Italy. So very happy to bring all of this together here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you very much. And we do encourage you to share any questions that you have. So please make use of the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen should you have any questions for our panelists as we have our discussion. I would like to start with you, Martí. It'd be interesting to hear the work that Nemi is doing in this space. So if you could set the scene for us before we kind of go into the conversation, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. So actually, we provide the technology, which sometimes when you think about rural, and we will discuss later on, digitalization might be a barrier, but still it's a powerful tool to support public transport operators, public transport authorities, to provide these essential services in rural areas. We provide the application for user, the concept of flexible transportation, the demand responsive transport is basically traveling only to stops that have been requested in advance by users. With this, what we improve is the efficiency of the service. We avoid empty trips of the vehicle, but more important, we make travel and waiting times for users much shorter than with regular public transport. So basically, for this service to run, we provide the user application for users to request the stops, origins, destinations, the driver app, because every trip is changing, and all the back office to manage the service. I would say close to 80% of our services are in rural areas because demand responsive transport makes sense in this context with low demand. And basically we provide this improvement in quality of service to the provision of public transport, which is essential in a rural area because most of the times there is no alternative to car, and there are specific communities, and for example, teenagers, elderly people, low-income workers, which don't have easy access to car and depend on sometimes the only existing option in public transport.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess in rural areas and smaller cities like Helmond, if we're using Matthieu as an example, coverage gaps and driver shortages are some of the biggest challenges, if you like. And if we're talking about service models, demand responsive transport has often been seen as a potential solution to this. But how can AVs make these models more scalable and also more sustainable? Martí, sorry.
Okay. So maybe Matthieu, you can complement later.
Yes.
So basically, the challenge here in providing public transport in rural areas is the cost of the service. Basically, because of the dispersion of the population, it's normally low density areas. So the vehicle needs to travel long distances. The demand is often very low compared to thriving urban centers. And that means that the cost per passenger of the service, it becomes very, very expensive and it requires heavy subsidies. There's the second factor you were mentioning, which is driver shortage. In some cases, it's not a matter of being expensive, it's a matter that there are not drivers available for public transport operators, or sometimes we are operating with VTCs, taxis, and they are not present simply in these rural areas. So there's not even the option, even expensive. So given, let's say, I would say the challenge we face in Europe and the policy that has been recently taken by European Commission, by member states to give a push to our rural regions in Europe, it becomes essential to provide these services, very expensive. So the introduction of AVs at an affordable price, since cost per passenger is very expensive, and driver is kind of a driver for the cost, no? A big percentage of the cost of the service. If AVs could be competitive in that sense, that would make the provision of the service much more affordable for public authorities.
And Matthieu, do you have any perspective on this at all in terms of a smaller city like Helmond?
Yes, sorry for the transition. I was unmuting. Yes, so first, let me just very quickly present you Helmond. So Helmond is not really a rural area per se, but a small city. So I will therefore speak from the perspective of a small city and draw lessons which I hope will resonate also with rural areas. So Helmond is located in the south of the Netherlands. It has almost 100,000 inhabitants inhabitants, but it's a growing city, and we expect that 15,000 new houses will be built by 2040, which represent an increase of 25% compared to the current situation, and it generates a lot of pressure, notably on mobility. We are well connected to the outside world because we have 4 train stations on our territory, but we really lack bus lines, or I would say last mile connections, and we have few buses, the frequencies was low, and connections to less densely populated areas are really currently lacking, and this population is really wondering how to get from home to a train station, and or from a business park to where they work to a train station without a car. That's what is also an issue for them and for us. And this leads these people to rely heavily on private cars still. And this is a situation that we will change, but this is also a situation that many rural areas are also facing. So in Helmond, we believe that shared automated vehicle can help by providing safe, reliable, and flexible last-mile public transport services, and that can be efficient alternative to private cars. So we've been involved thanks to the support of the European Commission in several AV pilots where we tested shuttles, but not only, we tested also teleoperation and different types of AVs from logistics and passenger transport. And we have the intention, and I would like to draw your attention on this, next year to launch an automated public transport service in an industrial area called BZOB. And traditional bus lines do not circulate in this area. The bus stop on the outskirts of it, and most workers are taking their cars really to go to work in this area. So, and our goal is to gradually turn this automated system from a fixed automated public transport area to a non-demand automated transport service that would connect the industrial area to public transport and mobility hubs like trains. And we really believe that it can help improving the transport for the people here. And I believe that such an on-demand automated transport system could be scaled in other areas with low density in our city, but also beyond, in more rural areas. So we can, for example, imagine a small on-demand self-driving shuttle system that could connect a village to the nearest train station in the early morning, but also bring elderly people to health centers during the day, or run in the evening for young people returning from social activities, for example. You asked me about the barriers for AV deployment in small cities like Helmond. And I would like to stress first that one of the main barriers is still regulation. Getting authorizations for AV to circulate in the Netherlands is really a slow, time-consuming, and quite complex process. And for smaller authorities and operators with limited staff, I would like to say that it can be really a burden. But also I would like to stress, but it has been said by Martin and by you, Nicola, I guess, already, that physical and digital infrastructure readiness is something that is key. In Helmond, we had to modify routes, to adapt in some sections the physical infrastructure, and ensure that there was always a good digital communication between the vehicle and the infrastructure. So we really had to, and even small details come to my mind. For example, we had a close look on the maintenance of the trees, because it was of importance for the operation of the AV, and the systems could be disturbed by the trees growing in case of wind, for example. So I would say that in rural area, this can be quite challenging, for example, if you are in a forest or whatever. So I believe that road quality also of some sections in rural area can be quite complicated to deal with, as well as the digital network. It's also the cost and the business models. I will not come back to that because it was already stressed. And something that is important is the public's acceptance. It's not a given, I would like to say. And we notice notably that in the less dense areas in Helmond, citizens are worried about the AVs, about the safety, security, and digital exclusion aspects. So I relate that in rural areas with sometimes older populations, this risk can be even greater than in our city. And I would like to say that something that is very important for us is really to co-create the services that needs to be implemented with the citizens and stakeholders. So in Helmond, we do not want to implement services for only a few. We really want that there is inclusion. And in the pilots we had, we always paid a close intention to recruit diverse participants, including people with disabilities, women, but also those that were living in less dense areas. There was a great preparation work that was done for this, and small and I would like to say there are some chances that small and cities and rural territories are usually close to the citizens and stakeholders, and it may be easier for those areas and cities to bring them together. So I believe that an important thing is that in Helmond, we have always paid attention that AVs are complementary to the existing public transport, the train and buses, and do not replace in the first time those aspects. For rural area, I believe that it's important that AVs can play a role of a connector, and that bridge the gap between isolated places and the wider public transport network. And yeah, this is basically what I wanted to say. And as you understood, we in Helmond, we do not want AVs to be gadgets, but to tools that really solve concrete mobility problems. And I believe this should be the case for every AV solutions that are implemented. There are some barriers that are real for small cities and rural areas. So there's the regulatory, infrastructural, and financial and social aspects. But I believe that through gradual and inclusive approaches, we can really build trust and create a real added value. That's what is important. In rural area, I believe that it can create a real added value. And I believe that we can test and then deploy, of course, realistic, people-centered and useful CCAM services in rural and small city areas.
There's a lot to unpack there, Matthieu. Thank you very much. And I really, you mentioned, I think Martí as well, the elderly and the young people and the disabled. I'm curious, Andrea and Lidia, actually, like how do we truly ensure that we make these services and design them for the needs of the passengers rather than just focusing on the technology? Because I think in these rural areas, it's a very important kind of step. So I'm curious what you think about that, actually. Andre or Lidia, whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, maybe I can start with some information. First of all, if we want to include as many people as possible, it's about the design of the vehicle on one side. So you have to design the vehicle for the needs of everyone. So, for example, a wheelchair ramp, or in when it comes to communication, you have to make sure everyone can communicate, even if he or she is not able to hear, to listen, to speak or something. So the design of the vehicle is one side. The other side is the design of the service and the customer journey. So you have to implement the AV vehicles in the Good Mobility as a Service system to make it as easy as possible to book the trip, to plan the trip, to pay, and to enjoy the trip when it comes to the connection with the vehicle, to open the vehicle, to get out of the vehicle. Yeah, you have to minimize all the barriers and all the hurdles that we have to make it available for old, young, tall, small, for everyone.
And Lydia, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, actually, it's exactly what Andrew was saying. There are different elements to this. The vehicle is one, the service is the other, with so many different aspects. There was, I think, I don't know if it was Matthieu that was mentioning or Martí. There might be an issue with digital access to those services. And so in the rural area, maybe even more than the urban, there's maybe the necessity to have a call center that they don't book through the app. So there are all of these different elements, safety, the needs of people with specific needs. How do we take care of this if there's no one in the vehicle? So there are many elements in this service design. And then I will add another dimension, that is how actually we make sure that all of these elements are not just taken care in the specific service, but in the whole journey, that it can be intermodal. Matthieu was saying, okay, from the train station, they get an AV to go to the industrial area. Very good. So that means that the train needs to link to that specific service, and in both, you have to respect all of those elements. So this gets a little bit the chain of things that need to come together to make it inclusive. And last point, well, the design of all of this at the governance level. So the authorities, how do they take into account the fact that they want to have those voices around the table, what people need? You need to reach out to people that won't necessarily be there out loud. You need to take them with you. You need to engage with associations of people with disabilities. You need to go where people are in rural areas. It might be quite an effort of reach out. So there are all of these different elements to make sure that the service is inclusive and tailored to the needs that in rural areas might be quite different from urban. So we cannot really copy paste, but we need to take into account all of these different elements.
Thank you very much. I was going to go into people and acceptance a bit later. I was very curious because we mentioned the elderly and affordability and all of these things that I think are very critical to rural areas. If I just go back a step then to perhaps the technology, for you, Martí, what lessons do you think we can draw from existing demand responsive transport, DRT, otherwise pilots, when we're considering autonomous integration?
Thank you. I address a specific case of low digitalization because it's something we are facing in most of our services. In the initial phase, when planning with the public authorities, issue is always on the table, and sometimes it's kind of a barrier to implement it, like the lack of confidence on how public acceptance could be on the service. We are not talking now on the vehicle itself, but on the concept of flexible services, on the concept of having to book, the access through digital channels to the technology. And I want to give a positive message here, is that so far, the reality is that after launch of the service, the adoptance is very high, also for elderly. Of course, we enable always the telephone channel, so they can call a call center that introduces the booking instead of them. But even though in some services we've started with 50–60% of calls by users, and eventually, little by little, we've been transferring to digital channels. And the average in all our services is 80% of use of digital channels. So only 20% of people who are calling by phone. So it's a barrier. I won't deny that. But we are first with good work, with good communication to users, with affordable, or let's say easy, accessible digital tools. Like, for example, we developed a WhatsApp channel. Maybe installing an app and going through a registration into an app is challenging, but if WhatsApp or now with ChatGPT, with direct interaction channels, might be easier for elderly, for example, to access these services. And second is that in most of the cases in rural areas, it's the only alternative. So any barrier that might happen, the reality, the essentiality of this service, support them in learning on the digital, asking their neighbors to help them with this, and makes it that it becomes less a barrier. This is regarding digitalization, and then of course physical infrastructure in rural areas. Some places it's good, in many other not. And there are two other infrastructures that are needed. Is the charging infrastructure. Most of AVs are electric, and availability of electric charge, especially if you need opportunity charging during the day. This is very difficult today, at least in many countries in Europe. And then the IT coverage. In most of our services, we are experiencing lack of coverage of IT. So we had to implement strategies with drivers to still keep communication with users and keep them updated of pickup times. And last but not least, another barrier, I think, is the lack of resources at local communities. Is most of the times, first, the budget itself to face a pilot, a project, but then second, the human resources aspect. So most of the times, this project should be managed by technical responsibles that are dealing with many other issues on urbanism, on so many. They don't have time, technical skills, and support. So it's a huge barrier that could be solved through policy at national level to kind of help them on this process.
If I may add to what you mentioned, Martí, I think it's the question of the skills is really important. I mean, you mentioned that, and it's true for small cities, but it's also true for, I would say, medium or bigger cities as well. There will be a need to educate or to add some additional skills that will go hand in hand with the introduction and the deployment of automated vehicle and notably automated public transport services, I would like to say. And this question of scaling the people and or to adapt the knowledges of those people is something that is very important and should be high as well in the agenda. And I know that there are some European projects that are taking also into account and are focusing on this question. And I believe this is a key question also for the smaller cities and rural areas to take into account.
Thank you, Matthieu. And I think, yeah, you have, I mean, I can speak for the UK, for example, you have, the government, then you have the county level, then you have local government. I think, yeah, the knowledge that is exchanged within that chain is very pivotal and important to actually ensuring that those on a more local and maybe rural level understand what's going on and how they can best implement it for their cities. So thank you very much for that insight. And I guess in a way, we kind of touched upon it about with infrastructure, but I think, yeah, infrastructure, regulation, partnerships are very, very important in this because smaller cities like Helmond, for example, and rural communities will face different challenges to larger cities, whether that's, road layout or connectivity. So I'd like to explore this a little bit more. And if I turn to Andre first, what kind of key partnerships do you think, or business models or innovations are really needed to kind of overcome some of these challenges?
I think there are a lot of partnerships that we need to implement AVs in public transport, especially when it comes to rural areas. First of all, we need, of course, the PTAs and the PTOs who know the area and the demand of the people, what they need, to tailor the right service for them. So, of course, you need a HOLON urban, but I think you will also need different vehicles to find the right fleet size and the right adjustment when it comes to bigger buses, to smaller buses, or to robotaxis, for example. But you also need a partnership with an OEM and an SDS provider. Depends a little bit on the technology, but you have to qualify all the areas that you want to include into your service. And that's a huge amount of work from the beginning. And here we have to find a good solution to find a ratio between the costs and the hours that it takes to qualify all the areas and to make it usable, like said before with the trees or something. You have to check everything and have everything in mind when it even comes to the smallest streets. Yeah. The next step is, of course, the mobility as a service system. Like I said, not sure if it's handled by the PTA or the PTO, but it has to be included in the whole journey, like multimodal modality. I'm not sure if it was Martí who said first and last mile mobility. It has to be in addition to the normal public transport. We will not replace any train, and we will not replace the big fast lane buses with the huge amount of people, but we can build the bridge to make it accessible, to make it reachable, to make the whole journey more attractive instead of using the own car. Yeah, we had the PTAs, PTOs. The infrastructure is a big topic for partnerships because I have to come back to the ratio. We need control centers with call centers, with charging systems, and we have all this infrastructure for rural areas. We could have them in every city, of course, or smaller village, but I think we have to combine it a little bit to not have so much infrastructure, to not expand the capex from the beginning. I saw a question in the Q&A section. What I think is very important is the first amount of money which is needed to implement such a service, not only for the vehicle but also for the infrastructure. And it could be a solution to extend an existing service and maybe in more urban area. To use maybe a little bit of their infrastructure to not have the big amount from the beginning for the rural areas. And last of all, partnerships, of course, has to be on the government level to have all this permits and a kind of framework to not have all these, let's call it regulatory dance for every small area we want to have a service in. So there is a big network and a big ecosystem that has to be, tailored for scaling up in rural areas.
I'll open up the next question to you all, really. I guess because we've, I think, hinted a lot at regulation and governments, etc. So how do we think national and, I guess, EU regulatory frameworks can support this transition in smaller cities or rural contexts? I know we talked about like skills, for example, but in your opinion, what would be a good strategy, if you like, to supporting the integration of AVs in these smaller cities or rural contexts?
First of all, we at HOLON think Europe is on a good way to tailor the regulatory side, but there is also still a lot to do. First of all, when it comes to the operation areas, there is some regulation which is communicated to make us the life a little bit easier, to have a type approval on our own, and then go to the areas we want to have a service in and check if it fits or are there some specialties. But there is still some split out framework, let's say, in some countries where we need to have a special permit for every region. When it comes to Germany, which I'm most familiar with, there are different departments we have to talk to in every Bundesland, like North Rhine-Westphalia or Bavaria or even Hamburg. So there's a lot of double work at the moment, and I think it's the same in every other country. There has to be, or our wish would be, there is a bigger framework which we could use to push the scaling a little bit.
Understood. Martí, Lidia, Matthieu, anything you'd like to add on that in terms of regulation?
Yes, if I may, or Lidia or Martí, do not hesitate if you want to start. But I want to stress in my speech that of course, regulation needs to be simpler and proportionate if we want a deployment of automated vehicles and CCAM services in rural and small city contexts. But I would like to say that I've been involved for many years in the CCAM environment, and there have already been some progress done at national level. I remember that when I started in France, we had to deal with 3 different ministries in order to get an authorization just to have a test of several months of automated vehicles. And the experience we had in La Rochelle was mentioned in the law that was made later as contributing to an evolution of the law in order to facilitate the testing of CCAMs in that. So I really believe that the testing is crucial in the evolution of the law. And I would like to say that in the Netherlands, it's not simple, but we have really close and continuous cooperation with RDW, which is the vehicle authorities. And I believe this is crucial because their objective is to ensure that this vehicle can operate safely. So there is some, I would say, some fears also from them, and this dialogue, I believe, will contribute in making this simple. And I would like to say that at EU level also some progress is being made on harmonization. Fragmentation still remains, but I would like to say that I feel that there is a possibility for an harmonization at EU level, which will, I would say, facilitate things also and have some impacts on national and local level later on.
Martí or Lidia?
Yeah, I can maybe take another angle. We're talking about rural areas, right? And so I like to raise the fact that also in relation to how mobility and beyond actually is brought to rural areas, there are also news in terms of regulation, and the European level, there's been attention put on it in the last years. And so there are some regulation, one is the 10T regulation, they are putting stress into how actually we create this connection between urban and rural areas. So there's a lot of things pushing into better creating a regulation that enables actually authorities, operators, everybody actually to create solutions in a wider scale. But this is also happening at the same time that we're having this AV regulation. And I could add another layer because Martí was talking about DRT. There's also how about the regulation of that service. And in very few European countries, there's a regulation that really creates stability for those services. So you see there are different layers in this story of how AVs can help rural mobility, and all of those are kind of happening at the same time. So we are going to the right direction, but there's still work to do. And I think that we need to take into account that we were saying about skills governance, so we need that wider regulation that enables local actors, regions in particular, I would say they are really emerging very much into this story to organize all of those services where AV will fit and have a role. But there's also this wider picture. Maybe Martí can tell more, so I can give it to him.
Yes, Lidia, thank you for raising the point, because eventually, yes, even for driven vehicles, let's say, demand responsive transport is challenged in scalability because of local regulations. Most of the time it's not regulated, most of the times conflicting with regular public transport, and this is a bottleneck because most of the, let's say, concessions for public transport are running for many years, long concession time. There is little incentive for the public transport operator, the concessionaire, to change the way they are operating. And it's a bottleneck that is avoiding that useful services and metrics we are getting in most of our services are replicated elsewhere. So that's a good point, Lidia. And I would also like to take the point from Matthieu that testing is very important. And I would say most of the funding for pilots, testing, deployments at small scale to kind of test, evaluate, and then derive regulation has been focused in urban environments. So here it's I would say something that could be done better, or at least would be a second way of work to also put some effort in rural areas.
Thank you all. I'd like.
Can I add something on that? I really think we should not oppose the efforts that are done at metropolitan areas, for example, and the efforts that are done as well in the rural areas. I think the SICAM services can be useful for all these areas, whether there be big cities or smaller cities. But obviously, the services have to be designed and deployed in different ways in bigger cities and in smaller ones. So I believe there is space for everything, and I agree with Martí that the focus so far has been put more on the urban environment, and that there is more experiences that should be carried out in smaller cities and rural areas. But I believe there is really space for SICAM solutions at different levels.
Thank you, Matthieu. I'd just like to move the conversation a little bit on and to also give time for the audience to put any questions in the Q&A if they would like to do so. I think I'd like to talk about the types of people that are here. So integration, but more importantly, I think user perception and how we integrate with these societies or people. And I think for AVs to succeed, they need to connect seamlessly into, yes, the transport network that's there, but also passengers or people need to feel safe, confident, and included in this kind of conversation. So for Lidia, if I may, is that what role do you think multimodal integration plays in making AVs systems viable, but also attractive to users?
Thank you very much. Big question. I can break it down, but there are lots of elements that have been already said. So to me, integration is multimodal, but also multifunctional. With the integration is very important. And there are several levels that I like to highlight and maybe invite others to complete. So of course, we start from the societal goals and then local mobility strategy. And this is a point that is fairly weak actually in rural areas. We need to bring that vision, strategy, means, skills. So that is one part that needs to be built. And so there's a need of integrating this with goals and strategies. So that's the higher level. Why this is important for viability? Because it's the value for society that will drive the subsidies, we like to call them, or public funding stream into the services. So this is important. So one. The other elements that can really be helpful for viability, but also to make an attractive service in terms of integration, we said it. One big level is the service design. It has to be integrated in terms of, for example, talking about DRT, choosing the right service zone, hours, parameters like first, last mile cases, so connecting with the rest of the network. There's a space also for replacing some fixed route into DRT. There is that, but mostly I would say is bringing public transport, bringing services to new areas. So that is a lot to be done in what kind of service are needed in which area. So how we design this connected with all the other services. We need to avoid to have parallel transport. And there's a big thing about, for example, pricing integration. We didn't touch upon it, but talking about viability and streams, well, the users are paying, right? So that's one revenue stream into it. So how do we price these services? There's a whole thing about DRT, how they're priced. And if you talk about many operators and authorities, they will tell you, oh, it's a normal ticket price, but we know they're much more expensive and they can give much more quality. So I think there will be a debate there that we need to have at the moment, but I leave it there among one of the many elements of the service design. Another element, we mentioned it, integration of infrastructure and resources. And on that, maybe it was, I think, Andrew that was mentioning something about it. How can we actually access to e-chargers in bus depots so that we don't create new chargers? That could be one thing in terms of resources, but it's also about using the space like bus stops, mobility hubs, all of that. It could be about using the similar fleets, integrating different fleets, using those fleets and those drivers maybe for different services, but with different conditions to access. We haven't mentioned it, but a lot of the time at local level, especially in rural areas where there are not public transport services, the municipalities put money to have service for the elderly, to bring them to the hospital or to other social activities. So there's a lot of social transport services, kind of. We call them paratransit, non-emergency. So how can we make sure that we integrate with that and we use maybe the same platform for different resources? So there's a lot to be done to gain efficiency in this. And this is why we need to have local solutions with the local stakeholders. We said digital integration, of course, so I won't say much more on that. And a last point, we said it, but I'd like to put it out there as one of the levels: institutional integration, how we make sure that all the institutions actually they work together. And on this, maybe raising one point about what we see in DRT in some areas. In Germany is very clear, but more and more in others. DRT services might be run at very local scale, but actually they might be integrated in a regional orchestration thanks to a platform. So we share basically the cost regional level of this orchestration, and then the local level is just more operational. So there's a lot of this that can help create scale and efficiency. And of course, what I was mentioning before of using different fleets for different services, that's one key word that is used, is commingling, is having those different services brought together so that we can unlock this. And one more point, if I can, and then I'll leave it to all of you. Resources are lacking in rural areas, but actually there are more resources than what we think. And so maybe the business model should be more creative and play with the local resource example or ideas, actually. How about local commerces, malls? They can also fit into this revenue stream because they want to create possibility for people to go to their place. So this is something that we see in other countries, like in Japan, but there are more examples. So this is one. And the other one that we see a lot in rural areas is working with community, is working with volunteers, is working with peer-to-peer examples. So there's a lot of resources to unlock that might not be the ones we think about urban areas and institutions. So there's a lot of things that we can do to make them viable and attractive.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Lidia. I wonder if there are any reactions from the other panelists, and do we see integration as this main enabler, or do we think some of the issues that we've raised today, like regulation or cost, are those bigger roadblocks? How positive are we feeling to Matthieu, Martí, and Andre?
I agree pretty much with Lydia's point on fleet aggregation or fleet optimization. So we said drivers and vehicles are a scarce resource in rural areas. With AVs, the driver issue might be over, but still the fleet is a high cost. And several times we have the paratransit service on health issues, we have the school service, we have the public transport service, we have the parcels delivery service, we have the baker going there every morning to the, and eventually it's difficult, but some exercise on trying to optimize this at platform level, at systematic level, of course, would bring much efficiency to the service. Maybe AV is an opportunity to optimize them.
Andre, Matthieu?
I can also agree. Oh, sorry, please.
Sorry, Andre. No, I agree with with everything that was said to Lidia, but I would like to highlight what Lidia say about the fact that we need to be creative and find maybe some specific business models for the rural areas. I fully agree with that. All the more that, as mentioned by Martí, the usual public transport schemes like the concessions and so on are quite fixed and do not evolve very easily, are not really flexible in general. We speak, as far as SICAM is considered, we speak about flexible transport solutions, but the schemes are not really flexible and we need to take that as well into account. So I fully agree and support the idea of finding new ideas and new solutions regarding these business models.
Yeah, 3 in a row, I would agree completely. It's both. It's the creative design of the business case that we need to find the money to bring the AVs on the street. And it's the creativity that we need on the cost side with the maybe regional control centers and the local charging points to make it possible and fundable, let's say it this way.
Thank you, Andre. I'm just going to pick up a question. It's a regulation question from the audience here. So from Simon. Do you expect much change in the regulation environment after the UNECE automated driving system regulation was released? Will regulation harmonization make it easier to deploy across country borders? Whoever would like to take that can do so.
Maybe I should start and have the help from the others to answer the question. I think we need a regulation to have cross-border services, of course, because it's too complicated when it comes to warranty and things like that. So without an overall framework, it will be a huge task to have cross-functional services, from my opinion. So there has to be a service design which is completely safe when it comes to the regulatory from both countries that has to be or want to be included in the service.
Anyone else have some thoughts?
I would say cross-border. In our case so far, we are speaking normally about very local services when we speak about rural. I mean, the inter-regional services are mostly covered by fixed line and normally they work well. When you talk about DRT and rural services, mostly you are thinking on very local, which in some cases involve cross-border and there might be a challenge here, but I guess every region probably needs to face their own reality.
Okay, amazing.
I would just like to add that Helmond has just starting being involved in a new Interreg cross-border project called Flex, which is on automated mobility as well. And we are involved in this project with a German city, a small city, Vesta, and these cross borders aspect are part of the reflections we will have. We will try to try to see how we can contribute to improve the frameworks regarding the cross-border aspects of SICAM. And yes, I just wanted to point that out that this is part of also of our agenda, but I agree this is not an easy question because the question that was mentioned by the person, it was really about the global harmonization. I think this is still challenging to be effective, I would like to say.
We are nearing to the end of the panel, and I want to challenge our panelists, if you like, from the discussion that we've had, in one single sentence, if you can, what would you say is the most important step to making AVs inclusive and scalable in small cities or rural areas, especially, let's say, in the next 5 years? And I'll start with Lidia, if I may.
I was hoping I was the last one, but maybe it's a luxury actually that I'm the first one, so the other has to say something else. All right. Well, we saw it. There are so many different things. All right. So picking one is very difficult, of course, and it's not so realistic. But for the game, I would say that one angle that is important very much, I like to raise it, I said it a few times, is the regional integration. So playing really at a regional scale to unlock multimodal integration for services, digital. So I think it could be a very good level to leverage also, so that they can work with the local level and compensate a little bit the skills. So to me, that could be one highlight, if you like.
Thank you. Andre?
Yeah, I would say it's key is the ecosystem and creativity to find the other keys that we need to unlock the, I think, bigger potential in rural areas that we have in the urban areas, because the lack of the difference in the service level in the rural areas is huge at the moment when it comes to demand responsive or public transport. So ecosystem and creativity, I would say, is the key enabler.
Yes, thank you. Martí? Oh, you're on mute.
I come back to the issue of cost. I think most of the rural challenges are linked to the unaffordability of subsidizing public transport at the level that provides a quite significant service that makes moving inside the rural area frequently and with quality this challenge by cost. And if AVs, and I don't have the answer, if AVs are in the next 5 years ready to operate safely at a reasonable cost, this can be a change maker. In cities, we are talking about business models, about optimizing. It's more, let's say, gray areas. There are more gray areas. In rural areas, it's either you have a service or not. So it can make a big difference. All the other barriers, if this is achieved, all the other barriers will fall with time. So I would say cost of AVs.
Thank you, Martí. And Matthieu?
I would say, as Lidia, that integration is key. Is a key aspect for the deployment of CCAM, but also I would like to say that co-creation is something that is very important, both with citizens and the stakeholders of the territory, because it's important we use AVs not as gadget but as real services. I would like to say that meet the needs and expectations of the citizens and stakeholders, and that also take into account their fears, which do still exist as regards deployment of CCAM.
Thank you very much. So it is towards the end. So thank you, I would like to say to our panelists for their insights and to our audience for joining. Today's discussion, I feel like, showed that while rural areas and small cities face very real challenges, AVs do have the potential to create new opportunities that are more accessible, flexible, and that can be integrated into public transport. I think the key takeaways for me, if you like, are that collaboration across public and private sectors is essential to this. I really enjoyed what you said, Lidia, about not underestimating the resources of these smaller areas and what kind of communities we can tap into. And that finally scaling will require both regulatory support, but also very innovative service models. So thank you very much for your insights. If you enjoyed this conversation, we are having a PAVE Europe conference in Brussels, so we can have more of those conversations there on the 20th of November. But on behalf of PAVE Europe, I'd like to thank Martí, Lidia, Matthieu, and Andre for joining us. Thank you to the audience for being here, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. So I wish you all a very good day. Thank you.
And thank you for your moderation, Nicola.
No worries.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.